So we good? All right, good. All right. So if you're not doing these things, then you're making a huge mistake. Guys, welcome to Brick by Brick Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, George McPherson. I'm a real estate investor, I'm a real estate coach, and I'm an agent. Been doing this for quite some time now. As you could guess, I'm a little bit nervous. This is only the second episode, but as we go in, we're going to even get better and better. That's the goal, but also to give value. All right. So, what we're going to hit on tonight, guys, is 5 expert tips to finding ideal properties for you. Right. And this could be for investors that are going in, that are new to certain things. And it could be somebody that's looking for a property that they want to live in. Now, everybody have their ideal property that they want, and everybody has different criterias. Nobody's going to have the same criteria, right? So the first thing is going to be, you always hear people talk about this, right? But this is going to be the first one as far as location. You always hear location, location, location. But for some people, it might be good that they're living close to a school, and then for some people, it might not. Now, why could that be? Well, for a family, it will be ideal if they have kids, they have a school that's close, that's rated a good school, then that's going to be a good area for them to be in, right? So location could be something that's great right there versus if, say, for instance, the schools are there, but it's bad as far as the ratings. And then you have a family of 4 or 5 with kids. They're not going to they're going to look at that because people with family with kids are looking at schools. Those are going to be key points for them as well. So those are things that you have to think about when it comes to location, right? Also, what else could be good apart from schools? You're talking about hospitals, right? For an elderly person, it could be that they want to be closer to a hospital, especially if it's a good rated hospital. Now, my experience with that is it all depends on what's important for that person. Now, it can be a selling point, and it is a selling point if you're close to a hospital, right? But for me, that my wife was sick, and she had lupus. We had doctors going to doctor's appointment all the time. One of the things is we live close to a hospital, but I would never go to that hospital because that hospital wasn't rated as good as the one that we used to go, that all our doctors were. So instead of driving 10 minutes to that hospital, right, I drove 40 minutes to go to a different hospital. So if there's any emergency, I would go to that hospital, right? So you have to look at it as sometimes when you're at a hospital, even though you're close to a hospital, it could be a good thing if it's rated good, right? Because those are the key points that you're going to say, well, if you have an emergency, then, hey, we have a hospital right down the street that you could go to for any emergency, and it's rated good. Now, if they look up and be like, it's a horrible hospital, then that could be a negative thing towards them as well. And for you, right? I don't know what you're looking at as far as your criteria for a home, right? But these are ideal things that you should be looking at. And in a sense, like, say, for instance, police, a police station. That could be something, or a fire station, right? Location, location, location. You could be close to like a park, or a recreational. If you're close to a jail, then that could be negative, right? So it all depends on when people are talking about location, location, location. For some people, they want to live out in the suburbs. They don't want to live in a city. So when you're saying, well, we have an area where there's a lot of stores and restaurants and all that stuff. Well, some buyers may love that, but some buyers may not want to be in the mix of that. They want peace and quiet. They want to be able to say, listen, I don't want transportation close to me, because if I have transportation close to me, then it could be that there's more people that have access to my home, easily access. So instead of public transportation coming to my house, I'd rather be 20, 30 minutes outside of the city where I don't have to have anybody just pop up at my house just like that, right? Versus somebody that's driving by and there's a public transportation, they're always driving by the house. You don't know who's seeing your house in a case where they could come back. So while some people love it, there's other people that will be like, not for me, right? So when you're saying location, 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 it has to deal with what you want. If you're somebody with family, with kids, then you might be looking at good school systems. If you're somebody that's elderly, you might look at it as, hey, you know what? I want to be close to somewhere where it's a hospital, right? So any emergency, I have a hospital right down the street. You could be single and you're ready to mingle. So at that point, you want to be where all the party activities are. So you want to be in the inner city. You want to be close to restaurants and all these other stuff, right? People buy properties because of their church. They want to be close to their church. So they're looking for surrounding areas that they're within 10, 15 minutes of their church. So it all depends on location, and you now looking for properties, or as an investor, you have to, all of these play in, comes in effect as an investor. All of these might not come in effect as far as you buying your personal home. When you're buying your personal home, it's going to be like certain things that you're looking at, right? Just like I mentioned, if you have a family, then you're going to want to have good school systems. But for somebody as an investor, they might look at, hey, there's a hospital right here. That's good. I could rent it out to people that's doing nursing. Or they could say, hey, listen, you know what? There's a fire station down there, or there's an army base right down there. I could rent it out to veterans, or not to veterans, but to people that are in the military, right? You could say, hey, you know what? I'm close to a park. So this will be a great area for me to buy as a short-term rental, because they can come and they could stay at my Airbnb while they're going to the park. You could say, listen, I'm close to an airport. There's all different type of stuff. And you as the buyer, right, or you as the investor have to look at it and say, what are the things that are going to be important for me as far as location? Do I want to be close to these things, or do I want to be further away from them? What are the key things that I can look at and say, all right, this is good and this might not be so good for me, right? The next thing is going to be budget, right? I always say, if the numbers works, the numbers works. It's black and white. So if your numbers don't add up, then don't do the deal. And part of it is, that's for investor standpoint. But when you're talking about for a person that's looking for a home, I always tell them, hey, get pre-qualified, because at that point, you're not doing the person any justice that you're working with. Okay. And I want to apologize, because I know when I first started, right, me and my wife was going out, we was looking at all type of houses and wasn't pre-qualified. Now I'm talking about years ago, years and years ago, right? Before we ever bought any properties, we were just going out looking at properties. And at that time, right, we're looking at houses, didn't know what the mortgage was going to be, didn't know what certain things was going to be. We only say, okay, it's this price. That means our mortgage is going to be this price. But then in Tampa at that time, what do you have? Almost every community have a CDD fee. Almost every community have a HOA fee. Then you have all kind of other stuff that's added on top of that. So you have to say, all right, what is my budget? Now, I don't recommend, if you're buying a home and you're approved for $350,000, you go buy a $350,000 house. I always say, give yourself some room. You don't have to max out your loan. Or you say, listen, I'm approved for $350,000. I got $20,000 extra, so let me go ahead and bump myself up to $375,000. Don't do that. Be comfortable with the number that you're going in with, but don't try to max it out just because you're qualified for that. Okay. Now, as far as an investor standpoint, it all depends on the numbers. It's the return, right? Some investors, they go into it, and you have to decide what kind of investor you are, right? What's the ideal, not only the ideal property, but when it comes to the numbers, as far as the numbers, what are you looking for as far as return? The numbers have to make sense. So if that means that your mortgage is going to be $2,000 and you're looking for a cash flow on the property of $500, that means that you have to rent that property out for $2,500, right? And that is only if you're managing it yourself. If you have a property management, then you're talking about other stuff that you have to do. Now, when you're talking about a homeowner, right, You have to look at it and say, all right, I'm pre-qualified for this amount. And being pre-qualified don't mean that you have to get the loan. It's just being pre-qualified. You haven't go through underwriting or anything yet. But as far as that, when you find a property, right, actually know what you're looking at so you don't go over budget. So the best thing to do is know what you can afford. Okay. If you know what you can afford, then you're not going to screw yourself over or waste your time or the realtor time saying, listen, let's look at this property. And you know you can't afford it, right? Don't look at something that you can't afford or try to bump yourself up or anything like that, right? Know what your down payment is, know what you have as far as your loan, know all those stuff. So going in, your numbers match up when it comes to you purchasing that house. That means that you have to factor in HOA, you have to factor in taxes, you have to factor in all the other stuff that costs you money, because insurance, all that stuff is additional. A lot of times we're not factoring that. We're just looking at a number and say, okay, what is my principal is going to be, but what about interest, right? What about HOA? What about those stuff? So make sure that you're budgeting properly, okay, when it comes to that. Investors, it's the same thing. Numbers are the numbers. If the numbers make sense, then do the deal, right? Do the deal. The third one is going to be inspection, property inspection. And for me, man, I could talk about this for quite some time, and I might touch on it on another episode, right? But when it comes to inspection, I will not buy a house, and I don't recommend anybody buying a house without inspections. Now, I've seen this done in the past, right? And then you as an investor going in, if you want a deal, sometimes you're saying, well, you know what? I really want this house. So if there's other people on it, let me go ahead and try to see how I'm going to get it. And you might have somebody that tell you that, hey, you know what? If you don't do an inspection on the house, maybe they'll put you in the front of the line. And then you go ahead, right? Especially if you're a new investor, a seasoned investor most likely won't do that unless they have a great team of people that will say, listen, when they bring their contractor in, their contractor is looking at certain things, but a contractor also will miss certain things. Their GC will miss certain things versus when you hire an inspector, that inspector is paid to go through every single thing in that property, right? So if you go ahead and do that, now you end up with a property that have a lot more problems that you thought because you didn't do the inspection. And I saw this where when the whole hype of real estate was happening, people was purchasing properties without inspections, right? And you don't hear the results of what happened. So the thing is, as somebody that's coming in, especially if you're buying a home to live in, I do not, and I highly recommend that you do get a property inspection. Highly recommend. Why? Just like I said, there could be problems that arise after you buy the property. They probably put some lipstick on the property. And as soon as you buy the property and walk in, you turn the knob on your shower and the knob fall in your hand. And you'd be like, what's going on here, right? Those are things that can happen. But apart from that, what about the foundation? What if something is wrong with the foundation? What if something is wrong with your AC? What if something is wrong with electrical, right? You don't know those stuff. But if you hire a professional that knows that, right, you're saving yourself thousands of dollars. So I always recommend spend a couple hundred to save thousands. I will always spend a couple $100 just so I don't go through a headache that might cost me thousands of dollars, a property that I hate, a property that costs me headache, a property that now I have to get rid of, a property now that I'm going to probably lose on, right? That's why for me, knock on wood, I always do my due diligence, no matter what. I don't care if somebody else get it. I understand that speed is a part of the game when it comes to real estate, okay? But do your due diligence. That means that if you lose the property based on inspections taking long, then have an inspector on hand. So the next time you find a property, the first thing you're doing is sending that inspector. As soon as they sign the contract, you're sending your inspector in so you could get that. right? But do those stuff so you can avoid the cost of not doing it, if that makes sense. So make sure you're doing property inspections on all of the properties, because I've seen it to where it costs people thousands of dollars moving into properties that, because they say, oh, you know what? And as I feel like, if you have a agent or someone that's telling you that, listen, submit the deal and don't do an inspection, you need to check that person, whoever that person is. It could be a family member, could be a friend. If it's an advisor, if you're paying them money, if they're making money on the deal and they're telling you that, you need to check them, because at the end of the day, that is not looking out for your best interest. Your best interest is always wanting to make sure that you're buying the property that suits you, that's not going to cause a lot of problems, that's not going to cause a lot of headaches, right? Now, as far as new construction, you wouldn't want, say for instance, you're thinking it's a new construction, so you don't have to do the necessary things, right? Because at the end of the day, it's new. But even with that, there still can be problems. Now, the good thing is, with those problems, you have a warranty that comes with a new house. The thing is, when you're purchasing an existing property, sometimes that property don't come with a warranty. If the seller wants to give you a warranty, then by all means, the seller can give you a warranty. But those properties, the existing properties, don't always come with warranty, right? So those are things that you have to look into when you're saying, all right, I'm looking for my ideal property. You have to make sure that you check yourself as far as, all right, what is my criteria? What do I want the most? Does this matter to me? Does this, me being in a good school district, matter to me? Does it match up with my budget? Okay. Now, with the property inspection, am I okay if the property inspection comes back? Because a lot of times, as a seller at least, I hate when a property come back, I see the inspection, there's all but red lines, and then and some of them are going to be petty, okay? So when you see these inspections come back and you see all these green lines, the red lines, right? Look through them, because some of them are really petty, okay? And you don't want to lose a property because they're saying, okay, there's you need air in your AC. They need to tap off the Freon in the AC. And because that's like less than $100 or so it's going to cost, you say, you know what? You have to do that, else I'm not buying the property. But remember that there's other people that are interested in the property. So something that's going to cost you $100, you have to say, all right, am I willing to pay the extra at that point, right, to not lose the property, versus, all right, the AC is completely bad, and that's going to be a couple $1,000s to fix. You need to fix this, or I'm walking away from the property, because at that point, well, I can find something else, because that's not in my budget. If I move into this property, that is not in my budget to fix. So those are the things that you have to look at. Okay. Now, the next thing is market trends, and market trends change over time. Okay. 1 minute, it could be something with a modern look. Another time, it could be something where, you have different finishes on the outside. Some people might want fireplace and stuff like that. So it's always, market trend is always going to change over time as far as how things look. Now, at the other hand, market always going to change as far as supply and demand. Okay. So at 1 minute, you'll hear it says, hey, now it's a buyer's market. Okay. Because with a buyer's market, there's a lot out there. So buyers have options, right? But when there's a seller's market means that there's no options out there. There's barely any options. There's not a lot of houses on the market. So it's a seller's market. The sellers is going to benefit the sellers, right? So those are the things that you have to look at and say, what are the market trends and how it changes and how you could benefit from those type of change. Okay. And then the last one is longevity, as far as what you're thinking long-term on a property. I always say, no matter what property you buy, you should always have an exit strategy. I don't care if it's your personal house, if it's an investment property, you have to. and I'm gonna say this again. If it's an investment property, you have to have an exit strategy. If you're buying a investment property without an exit strategy, it's like you're setting up yourself for failure. Okay? Because what if something happens and you don't know how to pivot? You can end up losing money. There's a lot of people, when you think about it, people probably went into Airbnb, bought properties when pandemic happened, and they went into Airbnbs, right? And then that whole thing happened with Airbnb, and then people weren't going out and doing a lot of Airbnbs. Now you're losing money, right? So what was your exit strategy? Or if that don't work out, what's the next step, or what's the next plan I have in place so that I can cash flow on this property? Okay. I don't believe that you should purchase a property and not have an exit strategy. Now, what do I tell a homeowner that says, well, why do I need an extra exit strategy? This is going to be my home. Well, let me ask you this. If you're a homeowner, tell me what's the longest you ever lived at any location that you've been? Most people live at their location. I'm not going to say all. Most people average 5 years. Most people, right? Now, when you have kids, you might go longer, because now you're getting emotionally attached, not only to the house, but to the neighbors, to the school, to everything else around. So now you're getting more attached to certain things, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but always have in mind, all right, what's my exit strategy? Okay. For me, I have to be in a house at least 2 years. After 2 years, then I can kiss the house goodbye. Why? Because at the end of the day, I can sell the house and everything that's coming back to me is tax-free, right? Afterwards, I could take that tax-free money. I can go ahead and purchase another house. I could do whatever I want as far as investment, buy another investment property, put something down on a house, and do the same thing over. I could take that whole money, if I want to, dump it on the new house. So now I'll have a less payment. And if I do that 3-4 times and I do a good enough job, then at that point you could end up owning your property outright. So in some cases, it's just that when I'm not telling you that you can't purchase a property, but when you're purchasing a property, finding your ideal property, you have to think about long term, right? What is your exit strategy? How long do you plan on living in this property? I've seen people where they get fixed rates, and fixed rates I always recommend. But if you're getting an adjustable rate, you have to make sure that what is your long-term game, or long-term plan, or what is your short-term plan, especially if you get an adjustable rate, right? With adjustable rate, mean that interest rate change when that expires. So if you get a 5-year adjustable rate and you say, oh, I'm gonna do what George says, I'm gonna move out after 2 years, but then you get attached to the house. So when you get attached to the house, what happens? Afterwards, you start saying, you know what? Let me go ahead and, let me start doing certain things to the yard, all this other stuff. But then time come when the interest rate changed. So your 5-year expire, and now your mortgage just jumped on you, and it could jump to a point where if you have trouble financially because you lost your job, you wasn't able to replace it in that 5 years, a lot can happen. A lot can happen in 1 year versus 5. Okay, a lot can happen in a couple months. So in a case where something do happen, how can you rebound from that, right? If you have a strategy in place, then you say year 2, I can sell the house at that point, right? If you choose to stay in it, then cool. But know that if you choose an adjustable rate, have some reasoning behind it. Make sure if that you're refinancing or looking to refinance before that 5 years is up, right? Those are certain things you have to look at and say, all right, I have my ducks in a row. I have all my I's dotted. I have all my T's crossed. So with that, I'm not worried because I have an exit strategy. So as long as you have those things in place, as long as you say, all right, what's the ideal thing for me to look at? Well, location, then you're going to look at your budget, because location is going to be where you want to live at. Do you want to live in a city? Do you want to live in the suburbs? Do you want to live on a farm? Do you want to live away from everybody? So you just want to buy a land out in no man's land and just live peacefully by yourself? What are certain things when it comes to location? Is school's going to be important to you because you have kids, right? Is you being close to a hospital because you deal with some kind of chronic illness? You have to be close to a hospital. Those are the things that you have to think about on what's important to you and start looking into that. As an investor, you have to do the same thing. Being close to any one of those will definitely help you, right? Then you're talking about budget. The numbers are the numbers. It's black and white. There's no other way to explain it. Don't try to change it. It is what it is, okay? So as an investor, if the numbers don't fit within your criteria, walk away from the property. As a homeowner, if it doesn't fit within your budget, don't try to make it fit within your budget. Find something that does, okay? The third one is going to be property inspection. So you want to make sure that you're getting your properties checked out, right? By a professional. So get a professional inspector to come out and do the job and make sure that you're moving into a property. Now, can they make mistakes? They can, okay? But at the end of the day, you have somebody that's going through the property detail by detail and giving you something to say, hey, this is what I found, right? And then you can make your decision based on that. Not, hey, because this is the property we've been looking for a couple weeks, and this is the first property that we actually say we like. Let's just put an offer in and not do inspections because we don't want to lose this one. This is one out of like 20 that you've looked at. No, don't do that. Do not do that. Okay? Do not do that. I don't care what it is. Do not do that. As an agent, I will not. And I have to be careful with my words right here, because as an investor, I used to be able to say what I want, right? But as an agent, I have to be very careful. But as an agent, I would recommend them, highly recommend them, to make sure that they get inspection. And if they don't want to get that inspection, then that's all on them. But I highly recommend that they get inspections, right? Then you're talking about market trends. Just make sure that, all right, you know what's going on as far as in the market. Interest rates can change, right? Demand as far as house can change. There's a lot that can change when it comes to market trends. And then, of course, you have the last thing, long-term investment, as far as what do you see? What exit strategy do you have when it comes to you purchasing a house? A lot of times we say we want our forever house, but trust me, a lot of times we don't. We end up staying in our forever house for a few years, right? Then we say, listen, we want to move. And it is what it is, but just know that when you make that decision, right, be conscious about what you're doing. Don't make your decision just be rational and just go ahead and make the decision, but make your decision based on financially, based on what you're doing as far as emotionally, because people have to move. Sometimes you get a new job, you go on a new career. Sometimes it could be that you want to be close to family because you move out there. You thought it was your forever home, but now you feel down, you feel lonely, you feel by yourself because you move hundreds of miles away from family and friends. So all type of things can happen, but make sure that whatever it is that you're doing when you're looking for your property, look at those 5 things and make sure that, hey, you know what? I did my due diligence and this is a property for me, and you go ahead and purchase that property. When you see a property, when it fits your criteria, when the numbers work, I always say take action. If you don't take action, somebody else will, and you will end up losing out on that property. So guys, that's it for episode 2 of Brick by Brick Real Estate Podcast. Love y'all. See you on the next one.